Hello and welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Billy Derrick and Luke Wyatt, who's dressed in black for the occasion. Our podcast is part of the 440 Sports Network. Before we begin, Billy, tell folks about Anchor Impact, which is our title sponsor.
Yeah, Commodore Nation, you can get closer to Vanderbilt athletics than ever before with Anchor Impact, the official NIL collective for Vanderbilt University. Gain access to unmatched exclusive coverage and be part of a one-of-a-kind community. As an Anchor Impact member, you can gain exclusive privileges and benefits that offer deeper engagement with student athletes, coaches, staff, and the entire Vanderbilt community. You can access behind-the-scenes content, exclusive events, unique merchandise, personalized experiences, creating an unparalleled connection with the student athlete's journey. You also become a catalyst for change, redefining the landscape of college athletics and showcasing the potential impact of NIL on student athletes' lives. Help the Commodores thrive today and contribute now by logging on to their website. That's anchorimpact.com/register.
All right, our news is brought to you by the Wash House. Basketball season, also presented by the Wash House. You dreading laundry days? It's stealing time for the things that you truly enjoy. Let the laundry professionals at the Wash House take care of that for you with two convenient locations in the greater Nashville area. Drop off your dirty laundry, and our professional attendants will give you back the one thing you can never have enough of, and that is your time. Within 24 hours, you can pick up your nicely folded, fresh, clean laundry ready to be put away. Check them out at washhouseclean.com. Stop in today, get your time back. Steve Andrews, wonderful human being, runs a great business, good friend of mine. Thank you for sponsoring the podcast. Our news, Vanderbilt drops its second basketball game of the SEC season to LSU. We'll get into that in just a minute. Reminder, the show also brought to you by our friends at the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company. They are a third-generation milk and ice cream distribution company located in Murfreesboro, a partnership that began 50 years ago with Purity Dairy in Nashville to provide Purity milk and ice cream to consumers in Middle Tennessee. They now serve Southern Kentucky, Northern Alabama, Chattanooga, North Georgia. Today, they supply grocery stores, convenience stores, others with Purity products, as well as Mayfield, Nestle, Haagen-Dazs ice cream. For more information, visit their website at MPMCI. Of course, my favorite, the homemade Purity vanilla, which you can either eat straight, you can do it my son does, you can mix a milkshake and put some chocolate syrup in there. You can't lose with Purity ice cream. So buy some, help out those who help the show. All right, guys, we had no pre-planned agenda for the show. I think the mailbag will dictate some of it. Look, I'm just going to start with you. What's on your mind with Vanderbilt athletics at the moment?
Well, from 30,000 feet, things haven't changed much since we talked last. We did speak about the most important part of football season being the offseason, and there has been some positives with the portal. I'm very disappointed about the London Humphreys thing, the way it went down. There's not a lot you can do about that. If you get outbid, you get outbid. And if a kid wants to play at a place that can win a national championship, I certainly understand that and wish him the best. Besides the London Humphreys, there's only a couple others that I wish the kids would have stayed. Maybe Savion Riley. There's a couple others maybe. I don't recall all the names right now. But I feel like there was 3 or 4 that came in that I feel good about that we added. I don't think it's near over. I think after spring ball, I don't know, Chris and Billy, when the window opens again. But we're still not set. We won't know anything till after spring practice. So that's from the football standpoint. From basketball, first of all, before we go any further, you have to take your hat off to the kid Jordan Cambridge and what the women's basketball team has done. I know people say, well, no one cares about women's basketball, but hey, 15-1 is 15-1, and yeah, my hat's off to those girls, and I wish them the best the rest of the year. For the men go, it's been more of the same. We can go back to the other 4 years of Coach Stackhouse. The non-conference schedule has been unacceptable, losing the Presbyterian and all that. And then now we turn into the regular season, and it's the same thing. The injuries, the suspension with Dort, the inconsistent shooting. And I don't want to pick on one kid, but Evan Taylor has not panned out to be what he should be. it's just a mishmash of the island of misfit toys. And I hate that for the kids, especially Ezra Magnon, who is a consistent grinder who deserves the support of everybody. But I just don't see this one going. Last year I kept positive, but this year I'm having a hard time doing that. I don't see but 3 or 4 wins on the horizon. They're going to have to make 10 threes a night to have a chance to win.
Yeah, I
Billy?
mean, for basketball, Luke, you said it. Same thing. There's really nothing really new to talk about on the men's side. I guess some fans were encouraged by the Memphis game, but you're not really in the business for saying, good effort. At that point, you were 4-8 after that game. You're 5-10 now. And I think, even if they had won a couple of those non-conference games, yeah, the record might be different, but I still think the feeling, Joey and I have talked about it, just feels like there's a dark cloud over that program right now. And it just doesn't feel like there's a ton of hope for that going away anytime soon. So obviously you covered it. What the women's team has done has been phenomenal. I mean, Shea Ralph in year 3, right? And that's kind of the comparison there. The men's side of things in year 5, really struggling. Year 3, Shea Ralph has it rolling. And the crowd was really good on Sunday against Florida, better than they've had in the past. And it shows that growth. And Shea talked about that. So hats off to them, like you said, Luke. Football, I want to get to that window, Luke, you were asking about. April 16th through April 30th is the spring window. So you still got a few months away from that for any guys to enter, for Vanderbilt to snag any guys from that window. So just want to get that out there. And yeah, on the football side of things, Luke, Nate Johnson is the story, and Tim Beck, I think, bringing in really a different offense. Obviously Tim Beck at New Mexico State won 10 games, with Diego Pavia, a guy that I don't know could really start at a Power 5 school. So obviously that was encouraging. It wasn't at a Power 5 school. But I think there's some potential there with Nate Johnson and Tim Beck. They got the backup for New Mexico State, and some decent guys. I mean, Fontenette, I think signing him was big. They really fought for Fontenette, and getting him was huge. Obviously, we talked about that recruiting class, Chris, with Dante Carter and a guy like Whit Edwards. So I think there's some young, and Barton Simmons talked about this, some young leaders, right? Some freshmen they're going to come in and kind of make a statement, and so I think they need that. And with the guys leaving, it'll be interesting. You mentioned London Humphreys. How good can this receiver room be, and how good do they need them to be? Because that's going to be a big question mark with Shepard, McGowan, and Humphreys gone. So yeah, we'll see, Chris, but overall kind of believe it when you see it mode for football. I think most people are, especially after last year. But you do have some players, especially offensively now. Now it's just about, working in the strength and conditioning, program with the new program, and some new people in the program. So, we'll see what these changes do for the program.
I think we'll spend most of our time on the mailbag today. And Billy, I'll have you go ahead and pull that up in a minute so we can get to it. But I do have sort of just some thoughts I wanted to piece together here. On football, I don't know what to make of signing classes anymore. I mean, they're 1-year deals. I mean, they might even last you one semester. So, like the one thing, like I think they had a good class from everything I can tell. But how much of that is other schools just looking to the portal? I mean, I think you're going to see schools with quarterbacks. You saw this with Vanderbilt. I wonder how much high school quarterbacks are going to be recruited going forward. I mean, Vanderbilt signed 2, but and maybe they are kids that can help them, especially the St. Hilaire kid. But you've seen schools now just, hey, forget recruiting quarterbacks. We're going to go find them in the portal. And you've seen the best freshman Vanderbilt had last year just left. I think Vanderbilt threw a bunch of money at him. It just feels like it is. I feel badly for Clark. My criticism is I don't think he adjusted quickly enough to the portal. I understood what he was trying to do. I think it was very idealistic view. And I think they're being slow to react. Hurt them. But at the same time, I understood what he was trying to do. I mean, the guy did have a vision for what he wanted to do and how he wanted to carry it out. And now they're just seeing the fruits of their labor get sniped away. So I don't know what to what to do about that. Basketball, Billy, I want to ask you a question because you were in the gym for both the men's and women's games last weekend.
Not the women, but I was at the men game. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Joey was at both of them, right?
Yes, he was.
I vaguely remember we had a discussion, I think, during the Florida women's game of did Vanderbilt have more of its fans in the building for the – because I think overall attendance, there were more fans in the building for the women's game, but I think it was a pretty heavy Alabama presence, which is another thing. You're starting to see gyms taking over, not to the extent that it is for football, where you just go into an SEC game just expecting their fan base to be outnumbered. But
yeah. And what you're seeing too, Chris, is, even last year, like that Auburn game, I take that for example, it was probably pretty close to a 50-50 crowd. Vanderbilt brought a lot of people. So did Auburn. On Saturday, Alabama brought a lot of people. Vanderbilt didn't bring as many people to kind of match that. Volume-wise, they had some loud moments, but just looking around, you could tell that those empty spots are increasing, where the Vanderbilt fans should be. But on the Alabama side, it was pretty packed. So you're starting to see that kind of open up, and that'll make tickets probably more appealing for those road trips, especially Alabama, Auburn, Ole Miss, this Saturday. I mean, a lot of Rebel fans in Nashville. Yeah. And so, on the women's side, Chris, I told Joey, and Luke, you might remember this, it reminded me of the NIT game against North Dakota State, where it was general admission seating, and they moved everybody. Basically, everybody moved to the lower bowl, and the lower bowl was filled. It was standing room only in the lower bowl. But that's kind of what it felt. I wasn't there, but I did watch, and Joey told me about it. That's kind of what that atmosphere felt like. I don't know if you were there, Luke, but my hope is to go check them out. And that's Luke. That's a good sign to see their crowds, because I don't know the last time you could really compliment a crowd at a Vandy women's game, to be honest.
Well, you're right, and they did that yearly thing where it's $1 to get in. I mean, to me, just continue it for every SEC game except for Tennessee, because then they'll fill it up. But do the $1 game for the next game. The next home game, I think, for the women is Auburn. Do it again. You'll get, instead of 4,700, you might get 5,500. So, I mean, what does it matter? Keep doing it $1 a game. I know you don't want to devalue your product, but if you can just keep getting people in there and you keep winning games, then they'll come back next year and buy a season ticket. Now, and as far as the men's crowd goes, guys, I've been in that gym since 1974. And obviously there's been tons of changes over the years for different reasons. But it is to the point now to where it's 50-50 when we play an SEC opponent, unless it's someone like Florida or Texas A&M that's far away and they don't bring a lot. But now, it used to be when we played Alabama, there might be 200 Alabama fans sprinkled in the crowd. Now, the other day, there was probably 4,500. That's so disheartening. And it is to the kids. Tyron Lawrence even mentioned it in his press conference, complaining about, it'd be nice to have more of our fans here. The other thing is, our fans we probably had close to the same amount of fans, but first of all, there was no students. When there's no students in that gym, and you got the Geritol section, and then you got the other fans that still come, they're not enthusiastic. They're kind of like sitting on their hands waiting, okay, show us why we came, guys. And then you get behind 31-13, and everyone's like, well, this one's over. Now, Vanderbilt played well and got back in it and all that, but they don't have hope. When they walk in, they just hope to win. They don't expect to win like we used to. The crowd at Vanderbilt used to walk in there and say, well, we're going to win. If we have 17 home games, we're going to win 13 or 14 of them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you're lucky if you go 500. And it's just the atmosphere is totally the expectations of our team is low. Coach Stackhouse does nothing to help with fan engagement. I think he does a good job getting the students involved, but it's just the atmosphere is just nothing where it used to be or should be.
I don't even recognize what I'm looking at anymore. I let you guys cover most of the time. I've got stuff with my own kids, but I went to the Dartmouth game. I was the only media person there. They wouldn't have had a press conference if I hadn't been there. There were probably, I'm going to tip off, my guess would have been, and I jumped out of the press box because you can't see everything from there. Like I'm gonna kind of sit here in 3, whatever that is, on the sideline on the press box side, and just I'm gonna step out. I'm gonna be there at tip off. I'm just kind of crane my neck and look down below me, look in the balconies, all the stuff I can't see from the press box. I'm gonna guess there were 1,500 fans at tip off. It looked to me like later, as it filled in, there might have been 2,500 there. But I mean, you used to go to games and they'd play Nickel State or somebody, and there'd be snow forecast. It'd be 25 degrees, and you'd still get 5,000 people for a game like that. This was a weekend. Nothing was going on. No reason not to be there. Mid-afternoon Saturday, and nobody cared to be there. Media didn't care to be there. The Tennessean didn't care to be there because it probably wasn't worth its time to hire a freelancer, pay it $100 for whatever's going to get out of it. And I can't believe what I'm watching. Look, guys, I grew up, Luke, you'll relate to this. We didn't have a lot of money when I was a kid. And my dad spent what disposable income he had on season tickets at the time. And I would grow up hearing stories about the 60s and the 70s and the teams and how they were, basically national power. I grew up going to games. They'd play Rice. They'd have 14,000 people in the gym. And I get that it's a different time. It's a different city. All the reasons you could give me. But I got a 10-year-old who's become kind of a pretty big college basketball fan. And he takes a lot of interest in Vanderbilt. That's his team. And he turns 10 next month. They've not won an NCAA tournament game in his lifetime. They've been twice, I think. I think Kevin's last year, maybe 3 times. I guess they went 15. I can't remember if they went 15 or not, but they haven't won a game in there. They haven't been in the tournament since he was what? Just turned 4? How do you build a fan base and get people interested? And I don't, Luke, you tell me, I come at it differently. When I'm there, I'm in the press box, but I don't see or sense any urgency at all with winning or with winning back a fan base. I just don't see any evidence that it matters.
Well, they're taking a holistic approach. No, listen, here's
Coach Lee.
They've holistically killed everything.
Here's the thing, guys. First of all, and I'll take it by decades because this has been the worst decade in Vanderbilt football, men's basketball in history. The combination of the two in the history of my life, anyway. I think that the winning, the price you have to pay to win now, because it's gotten more difficult to win with the NIL and the transfer portal and all that. It's a different game for a Vanderbilt or for anybody really. And I think you're right, Chris. Right now, the people that are in power, and I'm taking Dearmeyer out of it right now, but the people that run the athletic department don't see the urgency. We're getting the checks. We still got the avid fan that's going to give the money to try to help us in the collective and all that. As long as we have that, it doesn't matter that the gym's half full of the other team. And that's just they don't care. They don't care, Chris. And I hate that for the kids.
I think, go ahead. I'm sorry. I've got some thoughts I want to add here, but go ahead.
One thing, I've said this before on the show, but I mean it, and this is the one I always get back to. I've heard it preached by everyone that's ever been in charge over there. David Williams, Todd Turner, Paul Houlihan, Alexander Hurt, everybody that's ever been over there that says, we expect us to be the best at everything we do, and we expect to win and compete for championships. And we're going to have a great experience for our athletes. Well, if you're not winning, it's not a great experience.
Yeah.
That's part of it is winning. And I don't mean winning championships every year. I'm just talking about winning. And everything about it says losing.
This is a theory, and I can't out and out prove it, but you'll have some good insight. I think that the start of, I think 2020 told us a lot about the direction the university was going to go. And it started with the media relations thing that called everybody over there flat-footed. I mean, nobody knew that was coming. And it was a part of aligning messaging with the university. And I've heard this complaint for years. I talked to a guy, and I've told this story. It's an alum. He said, I've probably given $1 million to the school in my lifetime. They don't even, I'm not even on their radar. And it's because you have, someone said to me, you probably got 30 mega donors that they can just count on to donate to whatever. And I'm sure that's probably a lot of where Vandy United is coming from. And I think because of that, why bother with the guy that spends $1,500 to get his family tickets? And it's something that means something to them. It used to be, a few years ago where like they couldn't get a pot to pee in under David Williams. It was very budget conscious. That explained a lot of the scheduling. Now I think it's almost opposite. It's like they can go to certain people. And I think there's a lot of political alignment between those top donors and the school and its mission statement. And I think everything is sort of in that
tunnel vision.
I think that's how they look at it. And so I don't think that, okay, why do we care to get the ticket office involved about, getting the seats filled for baseball, in the front rows? Like we talked about that for you. I'll guarantee that'll be a problem. Why do we care if there's, 8,000 people Memorial and 4,000 of them are Alabama fans? Why do we care if it's 8 or if it's 12? Because we'll just go to Joe Mega Donor and in one conversation get a check written for an amount that dwarfs all the problem. I think that's part of it, Luke. I think so many people, they got so many people at the administrative level that they can go to get checks written for this or that your $1,000 and whatever shows up in the gym doesn't matter here or there to anybody over there.
Let me say one more thing, and I know this to be a fact because I was working there when this happened, and it still goes on because I know where people sit. It used to be that the ticket office would monitor, like every employee would get 2 to 4 season tickets, and you're supposed to use them for your immediate family. And if you can't use them, give them back to the ticket office so they can resell them to a Vanderbilt fan. They would sell them to their friends that were fans of other teams. Now, to me, that's a fireable offense. I'm sorry, maybe that's too harsh for some people. But do you think if you're at Alabama and you give your tickets to an Auburn fan to sit and cheer against Alabama in their gym, you would last very long in that athletic department? But that's the way Vanderbilt is. Oh, we're just glad to be here. Oh, you want to come and cheer for Kentucky? Go ahead. Here's my tickets. That's the other mentality. You can't have that. You have to tell your employees, if you give those tickets to a Kentucky fan, then first of all, you lose your season ticket privilege. And if we caught you doing it again, you're fired. It's silly. They don't care who's in that gym. They don't care.
We've got, it's State of the Union time coming up for the government. Usually it's delivered in January. I think this year the president's address is going to be in March, but we've kind of got a State of the Union of our own that we cover. It's going to be the 4-year anniversary on February 4th of Malcolm Turner's firing / resignation. I've done some, because really the only thing that should matter is the scoreboard. And I'm not going to go through that. We're kind of the point we're having to ration content. People say, why you guys not do as many podcasts anymore? Like, well, we're just talking about the same thing every week.
Yeah.
Like how many different ways can you talk about losing? I don't know. I mean, and Billy, we've had this private. I'm just. It gets to the point it's kind of just depressing. I wish we had, and thank God baseball's here in 5 weeks. Because my goodness, I'm already diving in with both feet on that, and we're going to get a lot of baseball content here, whether you like it or not. Because I need something else to talk about. But I mean, that's just kind of where we are. I mean, I joke about it because that's all I've got left. It's just, Luke, it's been depressing.
Well,
I know I'm a big critic of the school. I'm not doing it to burn everybody down. I want to see them do better. I mean, somebody put it to me this way. When they fell a couple of spots in the U.S. News and World Report's rankings, I mean, it was sending out emails to alums and press releases, and we dropped this because the methodology, I mean, it was like a 5-alarm fire over there. And that's something they couldn't really control. They lose basketball and football games. And I mean, you can talk all you want about athletics being on equal footing. Last year, Vanderbilt went and got beat, with 101-44 at Alabama. And instead of a 5-alarm fire being set off the way it was with those press releases with the rank, what did we get the next day? We got an endorsement, like the job he's doing. I don't see any panic. Billy, you and I are in press conferences with the administrators in that room. I don't see panic. I don't see – I mean, you walk in the room, you can't tell if they've won by 20 or lost by 30. I don't – you can talk until you're blue in the face about alignment between athletics and the school and everything, but until I see a similar reaction to just losing one game after – and look, guys, what's been our highlight in men's basketball and football this year? I mean, since this academic year, I'm not counting. Was it the win over UNC Asheville in basketball? Greensboro. I get all those. Or was it the win over Hawaii in football? I mean, that's what we're left with.
Yeah, Chris, I don't even know. I mean, it's hard to talk positively. You know, that's my biggest thing. Like it's with football and basketball. Take baseball out. It's hard. I mean, I bring up something positively, like the Nate Johnson thing. I think Nate Johnson can be a really good player at Vanderbilt and Tim Beck, but it's still hard because of last season and that cloud over the program, especially basketball. And until something changes, that's the way it's going to be. And it's really, I mean, I've never seen it in my lifetime, both programs this bad. I think both of y'all would agree as well. And that's saying something that kind of almost, I guess you'd say 3 separate generations, I mean, you've never seen it like this. And so, yeah. And Chris, you brought up your son taking a liking to Vanderbilt basketball. And, I got little brothers that love watching the games too. But, and I grew up looking forward to, if I got a chance to go to Memorial, I was fired up, man. I mean, it was a hot ticket. And, now it's like, okay, let's go. But we hope they win. Like you said, Luke, there's no pull anymore. And that's a problem. So we'll see if they resolve it. But for now, we'll keep talking the same way. But we do have the mailbag if you want to hop into that, Chris.
Yeah, while you're preparing that, a reminder, our mailbag is sponsored by Sutherland & Belk, a family-owned injury law firm. If your loved one has been hurt in an accident, give Taylor or Russell a call at 615-846-6200, see what your rights are and if they can help. Also presented by John Levin and the Maynard Nexus Government Contracts Group. Maynard Nexus advises government contractors on all aspects of their needs with a proud focus on matching legal solutions to business needs. Thank you sincerely from the bottom of my heart to both of you for sponsoring that. Really, really appreciate it at a time where it's just hard to sell things when the wins aren't coming. And we appreciate the people that have stuck by us. All right, Billy, start us off in the mailbag and let's have at it.
All right, we'll start with Baseball Bros. He says, when do y'all think Vanderbilt basketball will actually get an SEC win? And I'll kind of run through. Let's do this. I'll run through kind of their next 10 games or so, and y'all give me kind of a yes or no. All right. At Ole Miss this Saturday.
No.
Against Auburn next Wednesday here in Nashville.
No.
At Mississippi State next Saturday.
No.
Against Tennessee in Nashville Saturday.
No.
At Auburn.
No.
January 31st. Against Missouri at home.
Maybe.
There you go.
So is that is that the first? Missouri doesn't seem to be as good as they were last year.
Let me throw a caveat. If we have one of those games where we shoot 60% or something, we can beat any of those teams you mentioned. But if playing at the level we're playing at, no.
Yeah,
I mean, Missouri is the easy answer, but they did play better against Kentucky last night. They're finding a little scoring from Tamar Bates. I mean, I think at that point, it just depends on what team they want to roll out there. Is it one that's interested in winning or one that's beaten down by this? I mean, I see a team that's gotten better. I mean, it hasn't mattered for anything, but did play well against Alabama, did play well against Memphis. Those are teams that if you pick the tournament today would be in the field. So there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to Joey, and again, I felt weird saying this, but the Alabama game I thought was encouraging for whatever that's worth. I mean, Memphis too. I thought they played pretty well. Just this team playing well, even when Alabama didn't play very well, still wasn't enough. and you saw that last night too, right? LSU, I don't think played particularly great. They still won by 8, and LSU was a game that I thought Vanderbilt, okay, that could be one of their SEC wins, and it's getting harder to kind of project those wins, with this team right now.
Let me say something real quick, just to show you that say the Alabama, okay, lifetime we're 71-77 against Alabama. I can remember Alabama not beating us for a decade in Memorial Gym.
25 years.
Yeah.
Hope they'd win, not anymore. They come in with half the crowd.
They literally did not win a Memorial, I think, for 25 years, Luke.
Yeah.
Late 80s to whenever it got snapped a couple years back.
The only games that were ever in doubt in Memorial Gym during the conference play, when we had 14,316 in there, was Kentucky or Tennessee. Those were the only competitive. We'd always win the other ones. We 9 out of 10 times we win. We were going to go 7-2 or 6-3 in conference.
Hey, I remember going to games where they'd bring in Robert Ory and Antonio McDyess and Latrell Sprewell, and they good teams.
Yep.
And they would get whipped.
Yep. Because we'd hit 21 out of 23 at the foul line, and we'd shoot 48%.
And hit about 15 threes.
Yeah.
Second part of that question from Baseball Bros, what happened with all this NIL money, as the class on paper from the portal seems a bit lackluster based on what we were hearing about available NIL funds? Chris, I don't know what you'll say, and Chris, I don't know, or Luke, I don't know if you have anything, but I'll say that, and Chris, I think you've mentioned this might really come to fruit next year. Like we might see, like year 2 after this kind of wave of funds, which, we know happened, you may not necessarily see it in this first cycle. I mean, the season hasn't played out yet. So I don't really know that you can really, quite be too nitpicky about this portal class, because they haven't been on the field yet. I mean, you can say all you want about this portal class. Yeah, rankings wise, they're not great, but it might be too early for that. Again, there probably wasn't a big fish in there. I mean, Nate Johnson, I guess could be your big fish. You got Fontenette from TCU, but yeah, there's not really a huge splash in there where you go, wow, Vanny got this kid. I don't know what y'all two think, but for me, I think year 2, like next year, is when you might really see more of a jump, because you're selling after a 2-10 season. I think that sort of got in the way a little bit as well.
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Luke.
I'm sorry, Chris.
No, I want to hear yours first. Yeah.
Tongue in cheek, the most important portal guy is Tim Beck. He's not portal, but you know what I'm saying. To me, changing the offense, the philosophy, getting some guys hopefully out of those 11 transfers that are locker room guys, because I think that was a problem, even though I don't think Clark thought so. I disagree with Clark. I thought his locker room was a problem. Mm-hmm. And I thought as time went on, you had some cancers in there that were absolutely bringing people down around them. And I think it proved that with some of the guys that left. But, yeah, I think more importantly is having a new offensive coordinator and a new defensive coordinator in Clark Lee. Those are the two biggest things. The players will be the players.
Yeah, the locker room was absolutely a problem last year. I don't this is more just talking out loud than telling you this definitively. But let's just say that all three of us, and I hate to be degrading, but this is a good analogy to put it, I think, on level playing field towards what these kids are doing. Let's say we all got offered a job, and somebody said, Billy, Luke, Chris, we're going to pay each $200,000 to come work for us. And somebody else said, we're going to pay $200,000 to come work for us. And one of those was, you worked in the nicest office building you've ever seen. The company's a blue chip stock on the New York Stock Exchange. The other one is kind of a startup where you're working in one of those temporary trailers. Money's the same. Who you going to pick? I think that's kind of where they are with football. For lack of a better way to put it, I think that, does money matter? Is money a way to get them competitive? Yes. I think it's going to take a while. I think it's going to take a couple years of people knowing, hey, Vanderbilt's going to be a player in NIL. The other thing, I was eating lunch the other day with somebody that's really dialed into baseball. And I should have pressed in on this more than I should have, but this person just said, and this person would know, he said, we're still 3 years behind on NIL and baseball. Look, this baseball roster that's fully funded. Everybody used to have the jokes about full scholarships. They truly have those now. But I don't know if it's just what it is, but this person's perception is that, getting a late start is still affecting the state of things on baseball. I mean, certainly it hurt them last year with Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens would have been theirs, I think, if they had been willing to make a matching bid of what I was told was $250,000. And boy, would that have been worth it, but they didn't. So I don't know entirely what that means. I can follow up there, and I probably will. But, I mean, if that's the case for baseball, and it's the biggest brand probably in college baseball and probably the most successful program over the last decade, you can only imagine the implications for football.
Exactly. Okay. Hogan Knows asks, how long before they fire Jerry Stackhouse? Again, I think they're going to do it after the season. I thought there was a slight chance that they could do it mid-season. Don't think that anymore. I mean, I think there's going to be some flashpoints here. I think you're going to see probably some 30, 40-point losses. Do those sort of pile up and cause something? I don't know, but I still think it's after the season. Not sure if y'all have changed your thinking on that.
No, I agree with you, Billy. It would have to be something really catastrophic for him to fire him during the season. I do think he's gone at the end of the season if things go the way we all think they're going to go. Yeah, it's over with after this year.
I'm just not sure I agree. And a lot of it is who's pulling the strings. Everything I can only tell you there's two things that you got to do. And Luke, you might be the good in between. Look, at some point, if this thing totally falls apart, if they go for whatever, there's a point to where, yeah, maybe it's bad enough they have to make a change. And that's where we are. Everything has to go to, feels like everything has to go to DEFCON whatever. And let me just,
Billy,
go ahead.
No, it's true. And look, this year, approximately 4,800 season tickets, 5,200 season tickets. Do you think if we go 10-21 or 9-22, get put out on Wednesday night in the SEC tournament, how in the heck are you going to sell any season tickets to individuals? You're still going to sell your corporate seats. I don't care if we don't win a game. And that may be 3,000 of the tickets. But at some point, you have to, I mean, it's just like when Bryce lost all 18 games, they had to fire him. They didn't want to fire Bryce Drew, but they did when he went 0-18. Do I think this team will go 0-18? No. Now, there's going to be a breaking point with this squad, and I'll tell you why.
Yes.
Ezra is a senior. You got Tyron in his situation. He's already got his money, and I don't mean this negative toward Tyron, but after you take so many close losses, those hurt a lot worse than losing by 20. And you've given max effort, and you're playing to the buzzer, but you're still getting your butt beat because you can't hit the broadside of the barn with a bass fiddle, then they're gonna probably they'll lose the locker room, and then you can possibly get rid of or say, okay, Jerry, that's it. Coach these last 5 games, and you're done.
I don't think it's out of the equation. Something is caused by Jerry, whether it's a public tirade technical, which I mean, he's good for a few of those, that kind of paints the program in a bad light. I mean, that, we've seen that happen. Whether it's an altercation, I don't know, with a ref, a coach, a player, who knows? I'm sure they would try their best not to let that loose publicly, but we've seen that you don't really know what Stackhouse is going to say even after games and during a lot of those availabilities. So I wouldn't count that out. So Stackhouse maybe doing it himself. But yeah, I think player-wise, you could see that.
Another quick thing. Be quiet. Something to say here. Last night, did you listen to his post-game show?
I did not.
2 things he brought up. It was a poorly officiated game. LSU set tons of illegal screens, didn't get called for any of them. Doug Shouse told him, I want to let the kids play. Stackhouse got a technical last night.
Mm-hmm.
It's already starting to snowball with him. His frustration level is already here. And I understand it. I mean, I watched it. He's right. But that's what happens on the road in the SEC in most places. The other team shoots more free throws. Happens like we shot more free throws than Alabama or close to it the other day, to the end of the game probably. But, that's just what happens on the road in the SEC. But I don't think he has done himself any favor with the officials in the SEC either.
No.
Okay, gentlemen, last year he lost his mind at VCU, got 2 technicals, had to be escorted out of the gym. Nothing happened. Insulted the fan base through the 5.8% comment in The Athletic, which was just a dumb move. I don't care what you think. You're not going to win any friends that way. Nothing happened. It's been teed up a few times this year. Nothing's happened. Attendance has fallen to nothing. Nothing's happened. And I'm going to go back a little bit. Again, Luke, this is where, and look, sometimes Vanderbilt is not always crystal clear. It is a weird place. And I'm about to present to you evidence that got contradicted. And so I think, to cut to the chase, I think it leads to who wins the power struggle and who's making the call. But let's go back to 2016-17, and I think this is the time where you go back and read the press releases on the hire, on the committee, everything, and you heard the same stuff, I'm sure, coming out of the search, that they were not looking for a basketball coach. Okay, so they hire Stephanie Wyatt, 14-16, 4-12. 7-24, worst record ever in the regular season, 3-13, followed by 7-23, and then I think the worst record, the conference record in the history of the program, 2-14. So you had the worst record in the regular season in year 2, the worst conference record they'd ever had in year 3. Nobody blinked. Year 4, 14-16, 4-12. Year 5, 4-4, 0-3 in the league, but worse than that, morale was so bad, the team quit in January and didn't finish the season. Only team in the league that did that. By the way, the football team also didn't finish the season 2020. And again, meantime, what's going on? It is messaging. It is imaging. It is alignment with the university. Results were not mattering. Now, look, what I understand happened was that I think it was still Adam Sparks at that point, went to the school for a comment, went to Kansas. Is Stephanie being retained? Yes, she is. From what I have been told happened, Chancellor picks up the paper, says, wait a minute. You need to consult me on these things. And then a couple months later, after the season was gone, they pulled the plug and made a change. And to Vanderbilt's credit, the Shea Ralph hire seems to be working out well. But the point I'm getting to, we're sitting there exciting all these things that could set off a change, all these alarm bells that would set off a change anywhere else. Let's look at what's in front of us. The plug did not get pulled on that one until the chancellor intervened. So question number one is who's pulling the strings? And if the chancellor's pulling the strings, how much intestinal fortitude does he have to fight a culture that otherwise does not care? Because I promise you, the way they're looking at Jerry Stackhouse today is this guy represents us and what we want to be. And they're looking at him as the last year's SEC coach of the year and not all this other stuff that we've talked about. So, Luke, I'll give you rebuttal on that one.
I mean, I think you're close, but I do think there's a time, Chris, when common sense does come into play. And I know there's very little common sense over there because I worked in the environment for 40 years. I didn't have the other sense that they had so far, the book learning, but I did have common sense. And I do think there's enough people that have common sense that if this goes as poorly as it looks to be going, that they'll still get rid of him.
It's going to be interesting. We got, Chris, how much time we got left?
Luke, do you have a heart out right now?
I need to go. Yeah, I really do.
Okay. Hey, thanks for joining us. Billy and I will finish up.
Have a great.
We'll catch you next week.
See you, Luke.
See y'all.
Okay. Chris, we got a couple of good ones here. Don't want to go too much longer. VU Wars asks, what do you guys make of the recent football staff departures and new hires, especially with New Mexico State folks? Is it convenience or familiarity with Beck or other? In terms of the departures, I did see where Dan Jackson is no longer on staff. Nick Howell is over at New Mexico. I did see Dan Jackson landed at Idaho. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to look into these too much, Chris. I think coaching was one of their biggest issues last year. Yeah. And as Luke said, you have a new offensive coordinator, you have a new DC. How much does that impact their performance next year? I don't know. But at the very least, you've got that coaching change and decisions kind of figured out. At least you think so. And you've made those changes. So, for what it's worth, Clark being the DC, I think, is interesting. We saw Derek Mason do that, of course, after one of his early years. And having a new OC, I think, is very important. So again, I don't know if you've had a chance to look into those too much, but what do you make of those changes?
Well, look, I think we both heard enough to know that both the offensive and defensive rooms were a mess. Frankly, I would have moved on from Nick Howell a long time before Clark did, but I'm not in charge over there. I never thought that was a great hire. There was never anything that Nick Howell demonstrated that suggested it was a good hire, even maybe for a game. Vanderbilt has done this for a long time. They tend to, when they get rid of people, just sort of kind of do it quietly in the background and let people land other places. I don't know if that's a human decency thing. I don't know if that's a save us money thing, because it's easier to get a job when you have one. And part of me appreciates that about Vanderbilt in a dog eat dog world where results are a big thing. And I feel like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth here. These are people with families and livelihoods. And so, I guess to the point that it doesn't affect what you're trying to do, I respect that about Vanderbilt. But there were changes when you had to be made. The Dan Jackson thing, I'm guessing there was still some stuff brewing from the 2022 stuff in the background. I don't know if that's fact or not. Yeah, I mean, look, Billy, you and I both heard midseason, hey, things are going to get changed here. That they have figured out they need to go to a more mobile quarterback approach to win. None of the guys on the roster really fit that. I think all those guys in that room knew that when they took off. And what did they do? They went out and hired an offensive coordinator who oversaw an offense with a quarterback who could really move.
Yeah. And it's going to be different. That's the most important thing. You're not getting the same look offensively next year. And again, does that change how many wins they had? I mean, it better. But does it get them to a bowl game? Who knows? But at the end of the day, you're doing something different, and they made the change. They did have that wherewithal. And again, I've told you and Luke this: going 2-10 might have been the best thing possible for this program. As bad as it was, and for everybody to cover it, players, coaches, it might have been the best thing for this program. Chris, another football one here. I did see where Jacob Borchilla no longer on the roster, and I did see where he was a walk-on. Didn't perform great, but wasn't bad either. I mean, decent. I got a question from NBA Door. Is Brock Taylor really a better option than Borchilla? And I think it's an interesting question. Chris, we saw him at fall camp. Who knows? Brock has a strong leg. He's young, so obviously experience, accuracy, things like that, he'll have to figure out. Again, I don't know if there's any way to know, but it is Brock Taylor's team in terms of kicking now. I mean, I would guess, and I don't think they bring in a transfer guy.
It was weird. Maybe I just wasn't paying as much attention. I felt like they kicked less in fall camp than I'd seen in a few years. They always have the kickers and the punters over on that grass field working out. I didn't really have a lot of takeaways. Usually you can watch and get a pretty good idea. I don't have a very broad recollection of what Brock Taylor did or didn't do. Do you?
No, I mean, at the very end of practices, they would do these competitions, indoor specifically, because they do have those, those fake goalposts in there. They weren't, neither of them really, I mean, neither of them were great, but at the end of the day, Brock Taylor was, I guess you could say, highly recruited for a kicker and has a good leg. But yeah, I mean, it's not anything I look at and I go, okay, the kicker position will be drastically different. I don't really think that, but it is interesting. Borchilla no longer on the roster. I would have liked to maybe learn about that conversation that was had with Borchilla. So we'll see. Let's see here. Let's find one more good one. Okay, Chris, here's a good one. I know it's a lot of football here, but from NBA Door, and talking about Tim Beck's offense. Is Tim Beck's offense a gimmick offense, or is it just an RPO with a run lean? I still want to watch a little bit more film on New Mexico State. I don't know how much of them you watched, Chris. I watched a little bit of that Auburn game where they walloped them 31-10. And Pavia all season, Chris, was really one of the more underrated guys, I think, around the country that nobody was really talking about. And he was, 5'9", 180, 190, not a big guy at all. But yeah, they got creative. That's what that kind of stood out to me. I saw some trick plays, especially in the red zone, where they had to, and similar to Vanderbilt, they don't have the resources and the guys, that you need, in the Power 5 level. So they had to get creative. I just look at that, Chris. I'm going to look into it more, but I don't know if anything had stood out to you about what Tim Beck did at New Mexico State.
To me, the label's not important, and I didn't watch them enough to really have an opinion. Here's what matters. Do you have an approach that can work? And let's remember how they won those two games a couple years. Did I think Mike Wright was the best quarterback on the roster? No, I didn't. I would watch him in fall camp in 2022, and sometimes he'd have trouble completing, 10-yard slants against air. That's not really a place you want to be with your quarterback. But games are divided into sequences, right? You might be awful for 2/3 of a game offensively, but if you can string together some drives and convert a 3rd and 8 when the play breaks down and you can scramble out and get 11 yards, you can string a few of those together, you can hit a big play downfield, you can score just enough points sometimes to win games, and they did that. Mm-hmm. That's number one. That's how it happened with Mike. And I think maybe they felt, hey, there was something in that. Let's go back to number one. Number two, when you're running the ball more, it shortens the game. It makes for fewer plays, which I think is going to play in their favor two ways. Because if you get in a game with, let's just say you're playing Alabama, just for argument's sake. Let's say you got in a game where each team had 20 plays. That would never happen. But is there like a 1 in 100 chance Vanderbilt could win that game? Yeah, because in a small sample size, you know what's going to happen. Now, you play Alabama in a play where everybody gets 100 snaps, 100 times out of 100, Alabama's going to win that game unless it turns over the ball 10 times. Point being is that's the direction you probably need to. I know that tempo and those things, if you can do that right and keep a team well equipped to win games that way, then that's great. It's fun. It draws fans. They're not there. So I think if you can pull a game where you can draw from experience, you won a couple like that a couple years ago. You can shorten the number of plays. To me, it seems like the odds are more in your favor that way, and that's what they've done.
Yeah, that feels like, they've kind of gone back to that formula, and got them 5 wins, Chris. I mean, they dominated Hawaii. Got a couple of SEC wins, and this Nate Johnson guy, they think throws better than Mike Wright. And I mean, just watching him, I would assume he does as well. So that'll be interesting too. He's going to have to make those throws, but I don't know that, they're not going to be like they were this year. This year, I feel like they tried to really air it out at times. I mean, they wanted to establish run, but he couldn't run the ball. That's the bottom line. You got to be able to run the football.
Either.
Yeah, couldn't protect. You got to be able to run the football. And so, yeah, Chris, I'm interested for spring ball. With baseball, it'll be what we'll be able to split up those responsibilities just to see Nate throw, and to kind of get an eval on some of those new receivers as well. But yeah, we'll see. We'll stop there with those those mailbags, Chris.
Parting thoughts, Billy.
Parting thoughts. Got Ole Miss Saturday for basketball. Ole Miss is pretty good. I mean, I think they got humbled by Tennessee last week. We'll see. Chris Beard, has he played in Memorial? That's a good question. Texas Tech,
I don't think so.
I think that could be interesting. Beard and his staff, I'm sure he knows enough, coaches around the league to kind of, call on. I'm sure he's doing that probably right now, saying, hey, what's it like playing in Memorial? But that could be maybe an X factor. They're coming off that loss.
Is that game here or is that in Oxford?
Oh, Chris, you're right. That is in Oxford. Yeah. My bad. So that doesn't apply. Never mind. I've got their schedule all out of whack. I don't know that it really matters, but anyway, Chris, yeah, basketball, same stuff. I mean, Joey and I talked about the same stuff last night in our rapid reaction. Women's games should be fun. So I encourage people, if you want to go watch a fun, entertaining, winning product, go see that, that women's team play. And baseball, I think under 40 days away. Really looking forward to that, actually. And then football, looking forward to spring ball. But yeah, Chris, it's an interesting time. Not a ton going on, especially with the way the basketball team's performing. And we'll see what happens, especially in spring ball with football and then getting into baseball.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to baseball. I know people are really excited about the women's team. I don't have a lot of bandwidth for that, just with my life here, other than just to kind of monitor scores and maybe check in on the game thread. But Shea Ralph's doing a good job. I guess that's the bright shining light in the other misery. I do think NIL is potentially a path forward to them. I'm still a little, and part of this is just holiday break, just trying to set aside some time and give people some distance to do the same. I'm a little, I thought they would have had a little more traction there. Behind the scenes, what I hear continues to be kind of positive, but there's a little bit of a disconnect between, I think, funds and results, but there's also, as you pointed out, another window in the spring. So don't really know your roster till then.
No, you don't.
What a time.
It's crazy, Chris. And like Luke said, Vanderbilt might be behind, but I think we talked about it before. There's probably a lot of other academic institutions struggling with some similar things. So Vanderbilt, I think, got to try to get ahead of that.
All right. We done?
We're done.
Thanks for listening. Thanks to our sponsors. We'll be back with the Roundtable edition next Wednesday. You and Joey, in the meantime, we'll talk about whatever you have to talk about until Sanity leaves the room. So
we still need your opinion on that Dartmouth game, Chris. We never got you on the pod.
Oh, darn.
Where was the rapid reaction there? We were looking for it.
The rapid reaction was I needed dinner that night, so that was it.
Oh man, I was laughing so hard.
There was some interesting and fun texts sent back and forth that day.
There was.
Threats may or may not have been made.
Stay tuned.
Oh man. Well, thank you to everybody for listening. Hopefully, we've got something more interesting to talk about soon. But we'll be here regardless. So again, thank you to everybody for listening. Thank you to Billy and Luke, and we'll see you again soon on the Vandy Sports Podcast.